10, the same way we used to sell, and the same way Vince sells. I mean, they promise a number, and if you don't make it, then you try to make it up in other areas. And when we, of course, Turner, they just included us in a package, sports package, which we made whole, by matter of fact, because the only two things that ever beat us on the entire network was John Wayne Theater and baseball. So it's a matter of making it isn't the product totally. It's whether people will watch it. If they get enough people watching it, it will happen. I mean, it's like trying to compare venue attendance with wrestling ratings. There's a 5 or 6 million minimum television wrestling fandom out there that never goes to the venue.
Oh, yeah.
And they support the television, and that's why you can sell it, and that's why it draws a good number, and you're not going to change that. Our biggest missing factor when we were against Vince was the 11 to 15s, which we never really tried to do. I mean, Dave will have some chuckles if I bring up the ding dongs.
Oh yes,
but
everyone will.
Yeah, the whole world will. But the premise was that we needed some people that were getting the hell beat out of them every night to have some kind of a shtick. And the original concept, and of course David Crockett screwed it up, was that there was supposed to be a huge bell in their corner, and every time they made a good move, they'd come ring their bell. And then at the end of it, the opponents would beat the hell out of their head over their own bell. But that's beside the point, except that you have to find ways. I mean, when you have a small nucleus of talented wrestlers that they cannot just keep killing each other and people every night. Although the business years ago was made you wrestle 7 nights a week for 2 or 3 months, and then you take some time off. But the ability to attract ratings is a whole different animal, and all those day parts and all those demographical parts, you have to have people equally in proportion to each one of them, or you're not going to get those kind of numbers. And I think Vince understands it probably better than anybody, because after Eric stole all of his talent, he rebuilt his situation, and look at it now, and he's just killing them. So, it's one of the things that I don't think everybody really understands, venue versus television ratings.
One thing I think before we head to this break, one of the things I guess that you probably one of the most controversial things was your showdown with Ric Flair in 1991,
right? Which
led to Ric Flair going to the WWF,
right?
Over a contract dispute. I guess basically he. In exchange for dropping the title, he wanted a contract extension. It was kind of a hold-up. What was your side of basically what happened with Flair, and do you kind of regret it happening?
Oh, regret it. It was a stupid act on my part by allowing I really didn't really appreciate how deeply the Flair, Dusty, Rhodes hate was for each other. And when I made the mistake of bringing Dusty in as the booker, which was a humongous mistake for me, prodded by Petrick and ratings and lots of different things make you do dumb things. But you got to look at the other side of it. There weren't any runways and thunder cages and fireworks and everything before I came along, because Vince sure as hell didn't have them before if you go back and look at the tapes, those entrances weren't around before Jim Herd started them. But to go ahead with your question, Flair was holding out, and it wasn't the first holdout. I can go back to when I couldn't get Flair to sign a contract. We were at the Rosemont Horizon in Chicago. And it's time for the main event, and Flair won't come out, and I mean the feet are hitting the floor, and I think the roof's coming in, and he and I are in the shower you'll pardon the expression, trying to get him to sign a contract upside down with an ink pen that won't write straight up. It took us forever. And I thought we were going to have a riot on our hands. Finally, we got it signed, and he goes out and does his great normal performance. And so anyway, but to go back to the original question, yeah, Dusty was instrumental in that deal. He wanted Flair out, and so they convinced me that we ought to not go ahead with the contract. And Flair jumped and took the belt, and they took the belt to New York. And as most of your fans know, who is a real champion? What is a real champion? They beat the hell out of the NWA belt and put it on their air, and I thought it was a pretty good deal.
As far as some of the other things, there was a period with Sid Vicious. You had Sid Vicious to a contract. Now, what was the you basically let him out to go to Vince? How did that all break down, and he ended up going, and Vince promised him the WrestleMania main event. That was right about the same period of time where he was going back and forth. I mean, I remember when he got the collapsed lung, and then he wouldn't go to the house shows, to be in the corner.
Right.
And then every week it was, or every day it seemed like it was a new story. He was either going to Vince or staying with you, kind of playing both sides against the other, and he ended up going there, even though you still had him under contract.
Well, Sid Vicious was a pain in the ass from day one. I mean, he missed events. He killed young kids. Breaking their heads, and we had lots of showdowns on whether or not we even wanted him in our camp. And finally, we didn't care whether here's a physical specimen that's unequaled in all of wrestling. But there was no way we could deal with him, and he'd rather play softball than at home in Tennessee than to listen to us. So we didn't care if he went. In fact, I was happy when he went.
Well, actually, many other people were too. So.
And I'm sure Vince sometimes was happy when he left there. So it's one of those things where the whole issue is how do you convince guys to play as a team, and it's such an individual situation, and guys. When you sit around and try to get guys to put other guys over and all, it's a long, hard road, and especially if things aren't going well. Wrestlers are always looking to go where the grass seems greener, and that's where I appreciate really the loyalty that Flair gave me. I mean, and Sting and the Steiner brothers, and the Steiner brothers were legit. I mean, all you had to do is go to Japan, and I would have taken the two Steiner brothers and put them against anybody in the world and shoot and see it. They would win. They were that good. They have been misused lately, I think, and I don't know why they allow it, but hey. They are great guys, and so is the other guys. I mean, even if I have to take a cover shot while Luger's pounding somebody.
I'm going to read one email, and then we're going to get some stuff for Jim Hurd, who's our special guest today, former Executive Vice President of World Championship Wrestling. It says, your poll about the best international star from Britain is incomplete and means nothing. There is one major oversight. How could you not have included...
Big Daddy.
No!
Oh.
Adrian Street. Big Daddy never went out of England, so that's why. Especially looking at a few of the other names that made the cut above him. Yeah, every one of them was a bigger star. Well, even Asserati was, because he was a big star in the 30s. Adrian Street revolutionized the performance aspect of wrestling and was a great mat wrestler. Besides, what did Davey Boy Smith do but get into trouble with the law and ride Dynamite's coattails? He's a big international star for 2 decades. Until everyone forgets the last 4 years were not particularly kind to Davey, and it's his own fault. But you cannot also overlook what the guy did from like 84 to 96. I mean, he was a huge star in England. Steve Regal's good, but he hasn't done enough to be mentioned in the same breath as Adrian Street. I totally disagree there. Bert Asserati, come on. Bert Asserati's considered like the toughest guy ever to come out of that country. Bert Asserati was like a total legend among the wrestlers, more than any of these other guys, even more than Dynamite, at least with the guys of his era. Please tell me this was an honest oversight and not your opinion these guys are better than Street. No, it was not an honest oversight. I didn't think Adrian Street's in their league. So, anyway, got that. This is for Jim Hurd from Rod Dixon, who goes, Dusty Rhodes on Observer Live in December blames corporate America for buying a Southern family business for what went wrong with WCW. He blamed you and Jack Petrick and other suits for undermining his creative work. We've heard this analysis from every booker for the last 11 years of WCW, most recently from Vince Russo. There is definite clash of management culture between the Carney Southern promoters and the TBS executives. We've heard from the Carneys. What's your side of the story?
I don't know if I classify Russo as a Carney Southern promoter.
It's Booker.
Okay.
No, he's a Carney Northern Booker.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. Jim.
Yes.
What's your thought about all that?
Well, let's look at it this way. Dusty can say what he wants, but Dusty could never remove himself from every single angle.